Welcome to the Apartment Guys, where we dive deep into all things multifamily investing. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower real estate investors to reach their highest potential. Each week, host Tate Seamer interviews high-level guests from all over the industry who are sure to bring valuable, actionable ideas that will propel your career to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned investor, you are in the right place. And now your host, the Apartment Guy, Tate Seamer.
All right, everybody. Welcome back. Another episode of the Apartment Guys. And I've got Mr. Joshua Ferrari hanging out today, the Apartment Guys. And we just started yapping off right before we got into the recording mode. And everything was so interesting. I wish we had already hit record kind of thing. I wish we could back things up about 5 minutes, Josh. But hey, man, welcome to the show. I'm super stoked to have you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here, man. I've listened to your show a couple of times. I know you guys bring on some fantastic guests, so I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to have you. And we were just talking about some of the success that you've had just in the last essentially 12 months, right? Like putting some nice big numbers up on the board as far as unit count and assets under management and dollars is usually how that's always measured. And you know, it sounds like things are going well in all other parts of your life. So tell us a little bit about that. Like maybe start us out with like, where were you? What did things look like maybe, 12, 18 months ago, like 2020-ish?
2020, the only investment I had to date was a fourplex. And it was a deal we were doing all by ourselves, myself and my wife. We were trying to house hack it. Needed a lot of renovations, though. None of the units were livable when we bought it. We'd come to the end of our renovation period in 2020 because we actually closed on it in 2018. So roughly beginning of 2020, we finally finished all of the renovations and we're starting to get it rented. And I'm thinking everything's going well. You know, we went fairly significantly over budget, but for me, I said, well, this is the long play anyway. We plan on holding this asset for 20, 30 years. So it sucks. We went over the budget, but as long as we're tenants are paying the mortgage, we'll eventually move out, house hack something else. We'll be fine. Be great. Well, then comes September and October of 2020. And keep in mind, there had been a 16-year dry spell of no hurricanes hitting the Gulf Coast. Of course, as soon as I finished renovations on my first ever investment, here come 2 hurricanes, one in September, one in October.
Yeah. And
it messed the roof up. It did a little bit of structural damage, and it just wasn't. It was gonna be like $60,000 to fix it all. Of course, insurance was gonna pay for a lot of that, but I was gonna have to come out of pocket. I think about 15 grand, 20 grand, something like that. And at the time, I just didn't have it. Didn't have the money, didn't have the resources, and that property was continuing to kind of put a strain on our lives, both financially and relationally. My wife and I is putting a big strain on the marriage. So I was like, well, maybe it's time to just walk away from this thing. So anyway, we finally were able to sell that thing in January of 2021, and we lost a bunch of money on it, but it was a learning experience. We learned a lot from that. And so all throughout that process, I say all that to say, throughout 2020, I was also trying to get into the larger multifamily space because I liked the concept of what multifamily could do for me. I know we only had a fourplex and it wasn't really going according to plan, but the concept seemed like it made a lot of sense to me. I'd read a ton of books. I had a mentor at the time, and I actually had one business partner, and we had been trying to close deals for about a year. We had been underwriting a bunch of deals, submitting LOIs, things not getting accepted. It was just the whole runaround of trying to break into an industry in a space this large without having that background. Because I didn't have any background, and my partner, he had been in the single family space for about a decade, but he didn't have any multifamily experience. So the brokers looked at both of us as if we were newbies coming out the gate. So we didn't gain a lot of traction there in the beginning. So it took 2 years before we finally closed our first deal. But fast forward to December 30th of 2020, finally closed our first deal, a 42 unit that my mentor actually sold to us, interestingly enough.
Nice.
After all the deals we had continued to try to pursue and just kept falling through, whether it was falling through in the LOI phase, the PSA phase, we just couldn't get to the closing table. And so he'd been seeing our hard work over the last 2 years. And he came to me on August of 2020 and said, "Hey, I've been seeing everything you're doing. You're one of the very few people that's ever come back to me more than once after having a conversation with you, telling you what you need to do to get better in this industry." And when he said that, I couldn't believe that was true. Like, why are not like no one else caring enough to want to be successful in this? This seems like a fantastic industry. But anyway, he was seeing all the hard work we were putting in, and he said, "You know what? I've got a deal that's kind of reached the end of its life cycle. I kind of want to get out of the partnership too. It was one of the first deals I did in this particular market. And we are going to sell it in the beginning of 2021, either January or February. But if we do that, we're going to go through a broker and it's going to be at XYZ price." And he said, "But I tell you what, if you guys can close this deal before the end of the year, and if we don't have to go through a broker, then I'll give you a $400,000 discount."
Nice.
And I was like, "You better believe it. And you send me all the information you got. I would absolutely love to take a look at it." And then it was our first deal we closed. We didn't actually have a broker. So it was kind of a lot of work going through all of that, especially for the first time, not really knowing. I mean, of course, we had done the last 2 years of research and everything else, but actually going through the full motion and getting to the closing table. Because keep in mind, when we had this property in a contract, those 2 hurricanes came through. So the property got damaged by the hurricane. Now we had an insurance claim. It was a whole schwackle. We went from August to December 30th is how long we actually had it, under contract before we finally closed. So that was a crazy experience. And throughout that, we brought on a second business partner, of which we now are the 3 of us trio. Which we make up 3 Beach Capital now. And since then, we've closed 327 units, $19.5 million assets under management. We were really wanting to close 500 units before the end of the year. It's looking like that'll probably trickle into next year, but we've got a few other big opportunities we're looking at now. And at the end of the day, we really want to hit $100 million assets under management by the end of 2023, get to about 2,000 units. And we would love to each have about $50,000 a month in passive income. That is the goal, because all 3 of us are currently still working active W-2s. So we would love to get to the point where we can actually get out of those, become full-time, and then at the end of the day, turn the business into a self-sufficient business where we can hire an acquisitions manager, an asset manager, an underwriter, and basically a whole team that can handle the day-to-day minutia while we kind of become the visionaries of the company.
Yeah. Well, you already are the visionaries of the company. I'd have to say you've really created something here, Joshua. It's super exciting. And so it's 3 Beach Capital is the name of your company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do people find you on the intrawebs?
It's a great question. It's kind of confusing because we've rebranded 3 times. We started out as Ferrari Capital. Because we were all separate entities. And so I had created Ferrari Capital, which I still have, but it's just currently my own primary company.
Yeah.
And so you can actually go to ferraricapital.com and all of our information will be on there, but we are officially 3 Beach. We actually changed our name to Greenlight Capital, believe it or not. And then we got a cease and desist letter shortly a month later from a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund, of which somehow we missed and our attorney missed. So we were like, well, we're not really attached to the name anyway. So then we switched to 3 Beach. So we're still in the process of completing the rebranding process, getting the new website switched over. Yeah. But you can actually find us on the internet at Ferrari Capital. I promise you, same company, but different name.
Well, I just want to point out something that's kind of obvious maybe to both you and I, which is the remarkable parallels that our courses have been on as companies, just right down to the point of choosing Greenlight as an option for our company name. I mean, great minds, I guess, do think alike. But I will say that we haven't gotten the cease and desist letter yet. But I'll knock on wood on that one. And so far, so good. We're not Greenlight Capital though. So we're something different. You guys have really come on hard. How many doors? 19 million under management. How many doors again?
327.
327. Yeah, that's awesome. And how many communities does that consist of?
You mean like actual
Like,
properties?
yeah, actual properties. Yep.
Let's see. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6
Yeah.
properties.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's getting a lot done in a very short period of time. So yeah, and a lot of people know our story is very similar, starting with acquiring our first 20 unit in August of 2020, and then starting to really acquire the larger asset or the larger unit count asset class this year, and getting up to just above 570. But um and then us taking on a third partner, like there's just a lot of really similar trajectories here. So I'm really excited for you guys, Josh, and like I'm really eager to kind of get into what you feel has made the difference for you this year, because you spent 2 years really trying to crack the code of how to get these deals done, and you had a mentor. You were doing all the right things, right? And at least it sounds like you were. And then all of a sudden, well, the first deal, that law of the first deal, man, like however it comes is great, because it's so important to have happen. But that first deal comes along for you guys, and it sounds like that law of the first deal has really come true for you, where the floodgates have kind of opened, as they say, since that first deal closed in January of 2021. That's when you closed the first one, right?
December 30th of 2020. But
Yeah.
that's it. That's exactly it. We were planting the seeds, 2 years of networking, communicating, analyzing deals, talking to brokers, trying to really create solid relationships in the industry, to be known and branded as professionals in the space. 'Cause that's what everyone wants to be known as, because you have to be somewhat of a professional in order for anyone to take you seriously. So you can actually close a large multi-million-dollar deal that you would need to close in multifamily.
Mhm.
So I think it was really planting the seeds. And then once we got that first one, which who knows how much longer it would have been before we closed the first one, had my mentor not really given us that light of day, had he not thought of us, where would we be today? I don't know. But thankfully he did. We were able to close that one. And honestly, before we closed that one, we had the next one under contract. It's a 34 unit. And then ever since getting that deal under contract in September of 2020, we have not had a dry spell yet. Like, we've always had a new deal going on, and then like a deal closing. We even had 2 or 3 going on at one time before. It was crazy. I don't recommend it, especially for a new company. But we just really wanted to grow, really want to get to where we want to be. So we're yeah, I would definitely say it's probably that law of the first deal, getting the first one. That's all the momentum you need for basically everyone in the industry to take you seriously, and for you to honestly take yourself seriously. For you to build up that confidence and that courage to go out there and submit these offers that you otherwise would have thought you could have never closed. But all of a sudden you close one, so you can raise the capital, you can get like debt from a lender, you can go through the process, and it just becomes easier and easier as you go.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you say, it's kind of a self strengthening. So it gives you confidence as you go forward with the process, and learn all the things that you don't know, right? There's so much of that when you're doing these deals for the first time. And every day is one of those. And I'll be honest, you guys that do this with the W2, like, amaze me. Like, I'm just in awe of how you guys can hold it down. And I know you must love what you do, because you're in aviation. I wanted to bring that up here in a few minutes, and hear a little bit about your day job. But yeah, I mean, that's just a remarkable thing for me, because these are very, I mean, getting, that your mentor coming to you and saying, hey, let's do this deal, let's sell you this deal, like, that's just the beginning. At that point, you've got legal, you've got lender, you got lender fees, you've got appraisals and surveys and phase ones, and I mean, it just goes on and on, lease reviews and property management meeting, like all kinds of stuff, right, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another big pivotal reason that I was able to be successful, or that we were able to be successful, really, it wasn't just me, was the fact that there was a team, that I had
Yeah.
built a team around me of people that were maybe more competent than I am, or smarter, or had more drive. I don't really know what exactly the secret sauce was, so to say, but I know that there's no way I could have done it by myself. And that, I think, was one of the big mistakes I tried to make with the fourplex. If I had just had some kind of partner, or anyone that had helped me maybe on the equity side, someone that I could lean on maybe financially or educationally, or someone that had done it before, maybe they would have guided me away from the deal altogether, or I don't know, something could have gone different. Granted, I'm glad I did it. I got a ton of experience out of it, but I think that was one of the big mistakes I made, was not having a team. So I learned from that, and then quickly tried to surround myself with the team, with the business partner, and someone that could help me get deeper into the bigger multifamily industry, which is what I really wanted to be in. So at the end of the day, we could create that passive wealth.
Yeah. Talk to me about, you've known for years, a couple years anyway, that you wanted to go for the larger multifamily stuff. Where did that come from? Like, who suggested that to you? Or where did you read Rich Dad Poor Dad like everybody else? Or what's the story there?
So I guess I'll back up a little bit. My entry actually into the industry was in January of 2018. My dad called me up one random day. This is about 6 months after I had moved out of my parents' house for the first time, moved from Memphis, Tennessee down to Mobile, Alabama, where I've been ever since, to start what I thought was going to be a long-standing career as an aircraft technician. And been working at it for about 6 months, gaining a lot of experience in the aviation industry. The whole goal was to come down here, work for about 3, 4, 5 years, get the experience level that most of the bigger companies need, like FedEx or UPS or something like that, go work for them, and then move to go to Louisville, Kentucky, or back to Memphis to work for FedEx, and then, work for them for 30, 40 years and retire. That was really the plan of life. Okay. And then he called me that one random January day and said that him and my mom were going to start flipping houses. And I was intrigued. I wasn't sure that flipping houses was maybe going to be for me, but I kept just asking questions and asking questions. It ended up being like a 4-hour long conversation. At the end of the conversation, I was like, you have to, like, where can I learn more about this? I still have so many more questions. You got any books you recommend? What have you guys been reading? Because you're about to do this. And they told me that they are taking a course. And I was like, well, I can't afford a course. So, like, are there any like podcasts or anything? Like, is there any education out there for me? And he told me about, of course, Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I immediately bought that. And then I read the Cashflow quadrant. And then I proceeded to read 38 other books that year, totaling 40 books in my first year, and was listening to all the podcasts I could get a hold of. I was going to 3 different local real estate investor meetups. And I was really just trying to soak everything up like a sponge. And I started out in wholesaling, because one of the local meetups I went to, if you signed up that day, you got a free $400 value wholesaling course. It was going to teach you how to do it. So that was a benefit, because I didn't know anything about anything. So now I've got this course in front of me that's teaching me at least how to wholesale. But then also he kept telling me that wholesaling was the best way to get into the industry. You can get a baseline level of experience from a transaction perspective. Also, you can network and grow your network as a whole, and you can grow your capital stack by getting a little bit of money and closing some deals. So I was excited about it. I was like, heck yeah, wholesaling sounds awesome. I tried it for 6 months. We didn't close a single deal. We got like 6 or 7 deals under contract, but no buyers ever wanted to buy anything from us. So I thought, okay, let's pivot, because this isn't really what I wanted to do long-term anyway. So I pivoted to the fourplex, which we've already discussed. So roughly about 6 months after getting into the industry, here I am looking to actually house hack. And I was thinking about house hacking in a single family home and renting out the bedrooms. But my wife told me absolutely not. We cannot have random strangers living in bedrooms next to us. That's just not going to happen. So I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do? We can't really afford anything larger, but we really, really want to get into this industry. So I just started seeing duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes come up on the MLS and in my market. And I thought, well, I can't really necessarily afford these, but this could work. We could live in one unit and rent out the other. So I just have to figure it out. So I ended up actually getting my dad to help me out with the down payment on the fourplex, because I knew he was interested in it. So you could say that was the beginning of my capital raising journey. I don't know, but he helped me close that first deal, kind of gave me that momentum that I needed, but it wasn't really momentum because the deal went terribly wrong. So
Yeah.
I got into that. And then roughly about 6, 8, 9 months later, when things started going awry and it wasn't really what I had thought it was going to be, I just remember not only continuing to listen to podcasts and go to these meetups and talk to people, but I had read, I think it was Joe Ferrell's book. Actually, it was the big red book, Apartment Best Ever Syndication Advice or something.
Yeah.
And it was just a step-by-step guide of exactly how to do syndication. And I thought it was very interesting. It sounded like everything that I could have ever wanted in my life and in my business. And of course, I also sat down and actually had a conversation with my wife. We actually went on a retreat. We called it like our vision retreat, where we went up to the mountains in the middle of nowhere in Tennessee and just kind of sat around and talked about where we wanted to go in life. Next couple of years, what do we want? What do we want financially? What do we want our lives to look like? Do we want kids? Do we want dogs, pets? Do we want a house? Where do we want to live? Trying to narrow down all those things. And so that conversation really helped guide me in, okay, now I know where we want to be. I know kind of the lifestyle we want to live. Now, what niche do I need to go after that's going to help me live that lifestyle and achieve all that I'm wanting to achieve in the timeline I'm wanting to achieve it? And I remember reading that red book from Joe Ferrell's book, and I thought, okay, this is very interesting. Let's learn more about this. So I come back from the trip, and believe it or not, that same month we came back, there was a guest speaker coming over from Pensacola to Mobile, Alabama, to talk about none other than multifamily syndication. So I was like, well, naturally, I have to go to this meetup and just hear what he has to say, because he had, in the email, it said he had a couple thousand units worth of experience, like 10 years or something like that. And I was excited, like, awesome. He knows what he's talking about. Let's do this. I go to the meetup ends, and I just remember being in awe. Like, this, holy cow, it was like a light bulb, just something clicked in my head that this is it, 100%, this is what I need to do. And so I thought, okay, there's a few options I have now. Meetups ended. I've kind of got my caffeine, so to say. I'm excited about being in this industry. Do I just go home, continue to educate myself and go from there? Do I network with the people inside, like that are actually in the audience, like where I was, folks that maybe are in the same spot as me, wanting to get into it, or maybe a little further along or something like that? Or do I go talk to the speaker who's got just astronomical amounts of knowledge and experience? And I thought, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to go talk to the speaker and see what happens. Well, I ended up going to talk to him, found out we both had aviation in common. He was a naval helicopter pilot. I was like, well, that's freaking awesome. So that's kind of how we clicked. And from there, he let me take him out to lunch that next week. And then he ended up becoming my mentor in the multifamily industry. So that's kind of what sparked me on to the route of multifamily syndication.
Man, so many great takeaways there. Lots to unpack. I mean, one of the ones that's just like bouncing off. I took a ton of notes just now, and something that's bouncing off the page to me is that you created this vision with your wife that, and you went away, you went, kind of middle of nowhere. You said, got a higher perspective on things, kind of a 30,000 foot view, if you will, and took a step back and really decided, like, how do we want this to look like at lots of different levels, like financially, family, time, hobbies, like all this stuff, right? Like, you created this vision for your life. A lot of people call it creating a vivid vision. I'm doing this right now with our company. There's this book called Vivid Vision that's all about this process, and the book's about a 3-year vision, but you guys created a kind of very similar sort of thing that it was something that was going to informing the next few years of your life, it sounded like, and gave you a reference point for like all of the choices and decisions that you were going to make from there forward, which is really a brilliant way of putting the horse before the cart, if you ask me, doing life in the right order. You have anything to say about that? Or
yeah, no, 100%. It was kind of like a 3 to 5 year outlook, the vision we put together of what do we want life to look like. And it didn't come from knowledge that I had in my head of this particular idea. I'll tell you that. It came from the book, the reading the books, the networking with the people, the listening to the
Mhm.
podcast. It came from other people saying that they were doing similar things. I'm like,
Okay.
well, that sounds awesome. What they're doing sounds like exactly, or at least where they are in life. Sounds like where I want to be in life. And okay, here's how they did it. Here's what they did to get there. I really don't have a vision at the time. I know, I kind of know what I want. I know I want to get out of this W-2, but that's it. That's not a life. Once I get out of the W-2, then what? It's
Mhm.
not like I've succeeded. What happens after that? So I really wanted to nail that down. And then hearing that other people were taking these kind of like vision trips, so to say, I thought, well, that sounds like a great idea. Let's take a little getaway. We love the mountains anyway. We love hiking, love being in the middle of nowhere. So it sounds like the perfect time to just get away. No internet, none of that stuff, no TV, Netflix, nothing to distract you. It's just us,
Mhm.
nature, and we can just think about life. We can think about us as a couple, moving forward in the future, and then what everything's going to look like. So that is really what started it. And then you mentioned vivid vision. We actually have a vivid vision for our company
Cool.
that's sitting right here in front of me on my wall. It's called the title of it is the $100 million World Changers. It's written kind of like a newspaper article, similar to the way that Brandon Turner wrote his. Because when he told me he wrote it like a newspaper article, I'm like, I would have never thought of that about that. But it sounds like an amazing way to write it. So it took me about a year and a half to finally complete this thing. Because I just settled for bullet points for a little bit. And then I finally decided, after listening to the second time he brought Cameron Harold on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and they were talking about the vivid vision, I'm like, what am I doing? I need to sit down and actually make this vision vivid, not bullet points. And so when I finally sat down and wrote it out. And that's what we've kind of used internally, myself, my two business partners, to go kind of on the path that we're on and eventually reach the goal that we want to reach.
That's awesome. You wrote the vision yourself, or did
I
you,
did.
the three of you collaborate on it? How did that work?
I wrote it myself.
Okay.
They weren't super big into the idea of the vivid vision. They weren't against it, but they were just like me. They weren't copywriters. They didn't really feel like taking the time out of their day to sit down and write this. They just felt like they knew what
Sure.
they wanted. It was in their head.
Yeah.
That was where we were going to go. Me, on the other hand, I'm very much kind of like the visionary of the group.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, we need to get this on paper, not only for our sakes, but also for kind of the external view looking in, and all the people we're looking to partner with, the investors, the lenders, the brokers, everyone that kind of eventually wants to be a part of the group and a part of the team as we progress. And eventually when we decide to hire employees, they want to know what the company culture is going to look like and what the
Absolutely.
heck we're even trying to achieve. So I initially looked into hiring out this particular venture of actually hiring out someone to copyright the vivid vision for me. And it was just a little bit more than I was willing to pay at the time. And so I thought, you know what? I just need to be disciplined, sit down and write this thing. So it took me about a month after I decided that, to, in different intervals, sitting down and writing it out and coming up with what it was going to look like. But once I had it, I sent it over to my business partners. Was like, hey guys, this is what I've been working on for the last month or so. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you think I'm thinking too small, thinking too big, if you want to change things, tweak things, whatever. This is kind of going to be the vision for the three of us, of where we're all looking to head. And they read it and they pretty much loved everything in it except the title, because the title at the time was the $50 million World Changers. And my partner said, well, why wouldn't we shoot for 100 million? And I'm like, what are you talking about? How are we going to hit $100 million in 3 years? And he said, how are we not going to hit it? What do you mean? Like it's easily attainable. And when I wrote this, we had only closed on one deal. We had just closed on the 42 unit, which we bought for 1.85. So we had 1.85 assets under management. And he's telling me we're going to get to 100 million in 3 years. I just couldn't fathom it at the time. But I said, you know what? You're right. Let's write it down. Let's make that the target. If we don't hit it, so be it. We'll probably come a lot closer or further than the 50 million we had written down if we made that our goal. And so he kind of helped me think bigger. They both kind of did, kind of put it in perspective and made the target higher. So now we have almost like a greater purpose. I don't know how to explain it, but it really fueled me. And I think it fueled all of us to know that our target was higher than what we thought we could achieve. And then really thinking about it, we were like, wow, $100 million assets under management. That would be awesome. You know, it's just really kind of cool. And so that's what we wrote down.
Oh man, I've been like smiling as big as I can smile for the last like 5 minutes, dude. That conversation right there makes me so happy, because doing that kind of work is literally, in my opinion, is as powerful as like creating your own future. Like really is, it really can dictate reality. Like it can bring things into existence that otherwise wouldn't have been there had you not sat down and done that work. And my goodness, like how cool for those guys to jump in and be like, dude, we love this, but it's not big enough. Like we need to 2x this. Like that is awesome. How cool I mean, for you as a visionary to get that kind of like buy-in, first of all, to even what you had proposed, but then for them to like believe in so much in what you had created there on paper, to buy into it at, that they can double it. Like that's awesome, man.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
it was definitely exciting. And I think honestly, I think it's really helped us this year grow to the point that we are now. Not to say that I think we would have slowed down for any reason this particular year, and that since we had the momentum from closing that first deal. But I really feel like since we were all on the same page mentally, and literally we had the information all on the same page, no pun intended, written down on the vivid vision.
Yep.
We really had crystal clear clarity as far as what we're all looking to achieve by partnering. It wasn't just a nonchalant partnership of let's just close as many deals as we can and eventually we'll stop and maybe eventually we'll help people, and none of that. It was very targeted, very precise, and very exact for what it is we're looking to achieve in this partnership. And I think that really unified us and helped us get to where we are today, and hopefully will help us get to that goal by the end of 2023.
I don't have any doubt you guys will get there. I mean, you're already 20% of the way there. You're there. I mean, you're not there. Keep working hard. You're not there yet. But I do believe that there are processes like a vivid vision process, or a vision board process is a much more personal kind of process. I think it's not necessarily as applicable to a company, but things like that, they do have a magic to them, in my opinion. And maybe there's like scientific ways of explaining it that aren't magic, but I like the word magic, so I'm sticking with that. um Josh, let's switch gears completely, just because I selfishly want to ask you and want to know like what's working for you right now in terms of finding deals. Like you guys have been primarily in your home market, haven't you?
Correct. We've been down here in the Gulf Coast.
Yep.
One, because of our locale. I live here in Mobile. One of my partners lives in Gulf Shores, which is still technically the same MSA. It's just east of the bay.
Okay.
And then our third partner lives in Destin, Florida. So we're all down here on the Gulf Coast, covering the northern Florida Panhandle from Destin all the way west into southern Alabama. And being that we're all local to this area, it made logistical sense to invest in this particular market. But then looking at it from an economical perspective, or financial perspective, from an actual return perspective, it also was making a lot of sense at the time. I mean, we've got the natural resource of the Mobile Bay, which brings in about $12 billion a year in revenue for this particular city. We've got oil and gas companies. We've got naval battleship companies. Who would have thought, naval battleship employs a ton of people and they make a ton of money, and they're not going anywhere because they're government subsidized. The government's paying them to build these ships. Oh. And then we've got company Airbus building their A319s, 320s, 321s, and they just opened up another 220 line. They put over $1 billion into this market over the last 5 years. So we've got a big aviation sector. We've got the only cancer research center on the Gulf Coast. We really just had a lot of different diversity from a job pool perspective and microeconomics, macroeconomics. And then I think the real ticker, the thing that pushed us over the edge and wanting to invest in this market, was the fact that there was little to no competition in the area. I mean, back when we were first getting started in this, 2019-ish, 2020-ish, we're looking at deals and cap rates are like 8, 9, 10%. It was insane because you look around everywhere else in the world and maybe you could see that a little bit here and there, depending on your market. Most of the time it's a very tertiary market,
Right.
Mobile being a secondary market. So we're like, okay, we're in a secondary market. We're seeing these cap rates. This is like unheard of. You're like, where else would you find something like this? That's local to us anyway, that makes a lot of sense from a management and asset management perspective. And so I think being local and all those other things I just discussed really gave us the leg up on kind of jumping into the industry, getting investors to trust us, starting to raise that capital, closing deals, because we could be boots on the ground in a couple of seconds or minutes, but very short period of time, we're right there. And we know the market extremely well because we're living here. And it kind of helped a lot of people feel comfortable with the investments we were pitching and our expertise, especially just starting out, because when you haven't closed a deal before and you've never raised any money before, it's kind of hard to get investors to trust you and want to give you thousands of dollars to put to work for a deal and that you've never done anything like this before. So I think all of that combined really gave us the knowledge needed and the momentum to want to invest in this particular market. Now, fast forward to today, we've since closed deals in the Mobile market, Baldwin County, all the way up into, we just recently closed a deal in Montgomery. And we're starting to look at deals in Mississippi, further up in the northern MSAs of Alabama, and a little bit in Florida as well. So looking as we're continuing to grow our portfolio, we're looking to diversify geographically, but also just in different markets in general. So to answer your question, yes, Mobile has been primarily what we've been investing in. But then you wanted to know how we've been finding deals up until this point, right?
Well, yeah. Kind of what's working. Are you guys primarily broker relations as far as deal sources? Have you done any direct to seller, direct to owner stuff?
So to date, the only deal we've closed that wasn't broker relationships was the very first one that I got from my mentor. We just kind of decided early on we didn't want to spend the finances or the time doing the direct to seller marketing. Not to say it doesn't work. I've had many conversations with folks that are like, yeah, I had a conversation with a guy just the other day who did direct seller marketing, and on his very first deal, he made like $1 million because he wholesaled it because it was a slamming deal. And I just was dumbfounded. Like, wow, wish I would have seen that on my first deal. But anyway, I knew it works for a lot of people. We just decided early on we were going to focus heavily on relationships and the deal, actual like raising the capital and asset managing the deal was really what we were going to focus on. Yeah. So as we continue to progress and grow, I think eventually maybe we will do just some direct seller marketing, especially once we finally get out of our W-2s, go full time and start hiring a team. I think that'll probably definitely be something that we would need to do. But right now, all the deals we've had has been from broker relationships. And it just came honestly from the first deal we closed of then brokers taking us seriously. All the brokers we had talked to multiple times over the last 2 years that never took us seriously previously, never gave us the light of day. Now all of a sudden we've closed the deal and they're like, oh my gosh, look, I've got this other one over here. Come look at this one. Come check this out. And before you knew it, here we were. And one of the deals we closed actually came from a realtor, but it wasn't a multifamily deal. It was actually a single family luxury flip, kind of a one-off on an exclusive private island down here in the Gulf Shores. You would have never thought, or I would have never thought that was a thing, but it is. And there's professional football players and musicians like Kenny Chesney who all own property out on this island.
No kidding.
And so we bought it, snatched it up. And that's kind of like, we thought it was going to be a one-off, just a luxury flip, but depending on how well it goes, we'll see if that actually becomes part of the business plan, because we might potentially make $1 million on this flip. So if we do, then that will be really the capital needed to infuse back into the multifamily business. So it'll kind of become a second arm to the business. And I know that was very random, but all I have to say, broker relationships has been primarily what we've been doing. And moving forward, it probably will continue to be broker relationships as well as relationships with other potential partners who might bring us deals. And you might co-GP or JP or something like that. But yeah.
I'm a big believer in broker relations first. I think let those guys do what they're good at, go out and talk to owners, talk to sellers, and put deals together, and be as good a client for them as you possibly can be, and don't go and compete with them in their markets. Like, and effectively that's what you're doing if you start calling owners of these, especially these bigger complexes, the bigger communities that you're trying to get in with. Now, that said, if there is room in your model, and this is just a side note for listeners and for the discussion, but if there's room in your model for smaller unit count stuff, I think going direct to seller can be very, very advantageous, because a lot of brokers they don't care about that stuff, and would just as, just as soon you go after it than them fuss with it. So I think there's opportunity there. But anyway, Josh, you guys have just done some incredibly exciting things, and I don't need to ask you where you're headed, because you've already so vividly described it for us. And it's really a wonderful vision. 100 million by the end of 2023 under management, 50,000 a month passive. It's killer. And congratulations to you on your success so far. What would you say to the listener out there that's kind of in the space of maybe where you were, where, one thing that I think's, just to back up for a sec, one thing I think's really kind of awesome about your story is you tried one avenue, it didn't work out, the wholesaling thing, right? You tried another avenue in the fourplex, and it was an adventure, but ultimately didn't work out, right? And then you try this third avenue, and holy cow, it worked. And like, I love how, like, the universe or God, or however you want to make the attribution to, shows up when you keep swinging. Like, when you keep trying, you keep your nose down, you keep moving your feet underneath you. If you're a running back, whatever analogy you want to use, like, just keep working hard. And eventually, it's almost invariable that I hear these stories on the show that it ends up working. And a lot of times, like, imagine if wholesaling had worked, dude. Like, you'd be wholesaling right now. How bad would that suck? Like,
I know.
It's I look at it, like, I look at the same thing. Like, what if, like, I had been able to make an extra $30,000 a year doing wedding photography, and just been able to barely make enough to be happy, or think I was happy, or whatever, and never had the impetus to, like, up the ante on and level up my lifestyle. Where would I be? Like, and so I'm glad that didn't work at that point in my life, and moved me on to the next big thing. And here we both are. And hopefully, it seems like you found your stride, your company's found its stride, and you're doing exciting things. I can't wait to see what you guys end up doing the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Actually, I used to be a wedding videographer. Not really. It was professionally, but it was not professionally, because it was for a company that was my buddy's company.
Yeah.
I was kind of helping him grow the company, but I did that all throughout high school and college. But anyway,
no, I there was a question in there. I was going to ask you for somebody that's in the place that you were in with your fourplex, let's say. What, other than, like, hang in there and whatnot, what do you have to say to somebody like that, that's, like, looking into this multifamily space? They're listening to the Apartment Guys podcast. What do you have to say to them?
I think it's twofold. I think the first thing is never give up, especially if whatever it is you're actually trying to achieve, no matter how hard it is, no matter how long it takes, no matter how many restless nights and sacrifices and financial disarrays you get in, never give up. But then the second part of that is, there becomes a point when if you're doing something and you continue to lose money in it or you continue to fail at it, then it's probably not the thing you need to be doing. It's probably not what you're greatest at, and you probably need to pivot. So the second fold is don't be afraid to pivot. Don't be afraid to call it quits. Know when you've come to the end of the road and it's time to do something different that you will be successful at, because real estate is a really fantastic thing. And millions of people throughout the world have made millions and millions of dollars through real estate. So the model has been proven time and time again. And so that no matter what you decide to do inside of the real estate industry, you can be successful if that is actually what you want to do. And if it fires you up and fuels you, and you take a lot of time and effort, and you basically go through the model that all these other individuals have gone through, being successful in the industry. So if you're doing the wholesaling thing and you've tried for 6 months, you've tried for a year, you've tried for a year and a half, you've tried for 5 years, and it's just not working. You've closed a couple of deals, but whatever, maybe you're running out of money, or your marketing isn't that great, or you're not really marketing to your buyers, or the deals you're finding are crappy. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's time for you to do something else. Maybe wholesaling isn't right for you. You've tried. So maybe you should get into the flipping business. Maybe you should get into the burring business. Maybe you should get into the Airbnb business. Maybe you should just jump into multifamily, jump into small multis, do a bunch of house hacks. There's just so many infinite ways to make money in real estate that if one particular avenue is not working for you, I can promise you there's going to be another one out there that you'll actually get really excited about. Because I'm sure if you've been freaking trying to wholesale for a year and a half, 5 years, you're probably extremely discouraged and you just don't even want to be in the industry anymore because it's not working. But if you pivot and do something else, and then you find that actually works, you'll be enormously exuberant about the industry, and you'll just be diving headfirst, and you'll be successful before you know it. But that will then go back to the first principle, which is never give up. So never give up, and don't be afraid to pivot.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, as an entrepreneur, you got to be smart and know when to pivot. That's just to reiterate, that's very, very well said. And it's a big part of the game. So, and unfortunately, like, there's not always somebody right there in your ear going, time to pivot. Like, you kind of got to know as a visionary sometimes, like, and sometimes you got to make tough decisions based on limited amounts of evidence and knowledge, and you just got to go with your gut and do the best you can. But this vivid vision thing, I'll tell you what, it is a game changer. I'm so glad that I got to talk to you a little bit about it on the show. Listeners, check that book out by Cameron Harold. I know I mentioned it the last couple episodes just because we've been working hard on it, but it's a game changer as far as I'm concerned. So Josh Ferrari, thank you so much, sir. So ferraricapital.com is the best way for our listeners to find you.
Absolutely. And if you go on the website, you actually see all of our social media links. If you're the ones to stay up to date with us on a daily basis or weekly basis, social media is a great way to do that. And then also our investor portals on there, podcast, all the other information of educational stuff and resources and all that good stuff. It's all on there on the website.
Yep. So check it out at ferraricapital.com. And Josh, I'm very grateful for you to be on the show with me. Thanks a ton.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me out, man.
All right. You bet. Listeners, thanks for listening to another Apartment Guys podcast, and we will catch you next week. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to The Apartment Guys with Tate Seamer. Tate and friends are grateful to have you as a loyal listener. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe, rate, review, and share with friends on your Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. Also, check out Tate's YouTube channel for videos of many of these episodes and more. Until next time, take massive action steps and rock on.